BP was all but acquitted in the gravest charge that it faced, that cost-cutting caused the disaster in the Gulf. This was the initial finding of the presidential panel. The bottom line, profit was not put ahead of safety. John Hofmeister is with us now. He is the former president of Shell Oil. He is currently the CEO of Citizens for Affordable Energy. John, always glad to have you with us. I want to ask you, are you surprised at all that BP has all but been acquitted of this large charge? What does it mean as far as damages go?
Well, I think throughout the whole period of time, many people didn't think that the actual savings were all that great. It was a project that was over budget, over schedule. But the real issue, I think, comes down to the individual or individuals on the rig who were so single-minded in their purpose and intent of shutting in the well that they allowed themselves to make some very bad judgments. And the urgency to get this thing shut led to some decisions that should not have been taken when they were. And then we got the explosion.
John, we know it was a disaster by many accounts, but it seems like now gross negligence is going to be really hard to prove against BP. Some estimates we've seen say that means that BP's penalty or potential penalty could go from something like $17.5 billion all the way down to $4.5 billion, at least if you look at it in context of that Clean Water Act.
I think gross negligence is going to be difficult to maintain. There will be those who will continue to make the accusation that it was a combination of factors that never should have happened and that the complete combination leads to the gross negligence. But I've said since the beginning, let's find out what actually happened on the rig. This looks to me like the pilot of an airplane who flew his plane into a mountainside because he misread the ground prox warning system. I think we have a case here of an individual that made some judgments. It wasn't the whole of BP. It wasn't the entirety of the company. It was, put it in football analogy, it was a quarterback who wasn't up to the task.
Which is exactly...
And the decisions...
Sorry, John, I didn't mean to cut you off.
The decisions he made are just wrong decisions.
That pretty much echoes what the Commission co-chairman William Riley said in his report, competent persons who missed signals. But I'm just wondering if you're surprised, John. I mean, you're an industry insider for years. You now have your own company. I mean, the Presidential Commission versus what we've heard from environmental groups or from lawmakers. There's this Coast Guard International, or rather Internal Department Board report as well. It seems like the presidential panel is really on one side. All these other groups are on the other side. Do you have any problem? Do you have any questions about the credibility of the presidential report?
No, I think the presidential report is doing what it is intended to do. I'm sorry it didn't have subpoena power. Maybe it's not too late, because I think that would be helpful to the credibility. But those who criticize the presidential panel are really ideologically set against deep water drilling. They don't like hydrocarbons. But yes, it's true. Hydrocarbons carry risk. Always have, always will. But the history in the Gulf is that the industry knows how to manage hydrocarbons. Unfortunately, in this one instance, the individuals involved did not manage the risk appropriately, and so we have these consequences. That's very sad for everybody.
We are back now, as promised, with John Hofmeister. He is the former Shell president and now CEO of Citizens for Affordable Energy. John, before we took the break, we talked about the fact that this presidential panel seems to find BP free of the gravest charge that it faced, which was that it put cost-cutting measures ahead of safety. You say you are in agreement with that report. The report, though, does raise some pretty other big safety concerns. This discussion that BP made as far as removing the heavy drilling mud before fitting that final plug, some of the other safety issues. You maintain, in finding with the presidential report, that this was mostly the team on the ground making mistakes, not BP as the general company.
That's right. When you look at BP's track record in deep water, look at their operations around the world, they have very good talent, they have very good processes, and this is an anomaly. It was an anomaly the day it happened. It remains an anomaly. This was a combination of circumstances, for whatever reason, where people involved who have to make judgment calls I think were too single-minded in their desire to shut in that well to move the rig on to its next project.
So, John,
that single-mindedness of purpose can be really fatal in a hydrocarbon world where you have to take more things into account simultaneously.
John, you point out the dangers and obviously the risks associated with deep water drilling, but yet you are still for it, right? In fact, even Citizens for Affordable Energy is still behind the idea of drilling in the Arctic, for example.
Every morning when we all wake up, we need 20 million barrels of oil in this country to get through the day. If we stop drilling, there is no substitute in the near term for decades that would replace that 20 million barrels of oil. So the fact that we don't have the political courage to continue to move ahead on drilling is going to cost America its competitiveness, its security, and its lifestyle. I think that's wrong. I think the politicians have made horrible judgments here over a terrible accident. But it's a one-off accident. It was one individual or several individuals that didn't communicate, didn't make a good judgment. It's not the entire industry. And to give the entire industry the back of the hand, the way this administration has done, is totally wrong and harmful to the American economy.
How can you reassure people, though? Because we all saw the images of this oil leaking out every day, birds covered with oil. I mean, I hear you saying that it's an anomaly, but you yourself said it is high risk.
It's always high risk. Every coal mine, every well in this country, every refinery represents risk. But we also have a lifestyle. We also have an economy to run that runs on oil. And we have to take some risk. But 40,000 plus wells, Deidre, in the Gulf of Mexico have never had this happen before. 40 years of track record. Never happened like this before in the Gulf of Mexico. I rely on the data. The data says the industry knows what it's doing. And we should go ahead and pursue what is good for America and good for the economy,
John,
and keep drilling.
Just to play devil's advocate, what about taking all this money and all this human capital, human energy, and putting it towards greener sources?
Well, when it comes to our transportation, there really is no alternative other than batteries and possibly hydrogen fuel cells, and of course mass transit. This country has a hang-up with building mass transit systems. This administration has dramatically slowed down the Bush administration's effort on hydrogen fuel cells, and batteries, we know, lead us to the same kind of crunch point on raw materials because the lithium that is needed for lithium-ion batteries doesn't exist everywhere.
John.
And so we have a problem.
John,
we need oil.
Well, we know we have a problem. Maybe we can get more infrastructure, more mass transit in the meantime, John. We do thank you for the time. John Hofmeister joining us there, former Shell president and current CEO of Citizens for Affordable Energy.